I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music. Our special guests, Justin Hayward and John Lodge, both formerly of the Moody Blues. Justin Hayward recently said that he didn't think that the Moody Blues would ever be a band again, and it kind of looks that way because both guys are really having their own fun with their own bands doing their own thing. The Magnificent Moodies was the first Moody Blues album. It featured Denny Laine, who later became part of Wings with Paul McCartney, as the lead singer, singing a tune that went #1 called Go Now. But then he was gone, and Justin Hayward and John Lodge were brought in for one of the most iconic albums of all time. Many call it the first concept album. Some call it the first Prog album. We're going to get both guys to talk about Nights in White Satin, Tuesday Afternoon, and Days of Future Past, one of the greatest albums of all time, on Rock History Music. Moody Blues had a lot of great albums, but the crowning achievement was their second, the first featuring Justin Hayward and John Lodge, Days of Future Past. There was some genre fusion going on. Days of Future Past is one of the first albums to blend rock and classical music, a pioneering example of symphonic rock. The album features orchestral interludes performed by the London Festival Orchestra and conducted by Peter Knight. A concept album. Released in 1967, it's considered to be one of the earliest concept albums, with songs representing different times of the day, like The Day Begins to Nights in White Satin. The original intent. Initially, Decca Records commissioned the band to create a rock version of Dvorak's New World Symphony to showcase their Dynamic Sound System, DSS. However, the Moody Blues and their producer, Tony Clark, convinced Decca to let them do their own material, and it worked. A breakthrough hit, Nights in White Satin became the album's standout track and one of the band's most enduring hits. It was released as a single twice, first in '67 and then in 1972 when it achieved its greatest success, commercial success. The album did not immediately chart in the UK, but later became a commercial success, particularly in the US, where it reached number 27 on the Billboard Top 200 Albums. Technical innovations. The album was notable for its use of the mellotron, an early keyboard instrument that played pre-recorded tapes of orchestral instruments, giving the album its very distinctive sound. Legacy and influence. Days of Future Past is regarded as the seminal album in the development of progressive rock. It influenced many artists and bands that followed, really contributing to the evolution of that genre. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the album artwork. The iconic cover art, created by artist David Ansley, reflects the album's themes of a passage of time and the blending of classical and contemporary elements. You, Justin had told me, and you had told me a similar story about the originally with this album being planned for this, and then it turns into this. Was that a group decision of going, we're going to do this?
Yeah, group decision. we were helped by Peter Knight, the orchestra guy, because he was the leader of the London Festival Orchestra, and he came to see us at the concert in London, and he said, you should introduce your own songs into this. And that gave us an impetus. We said, that's it. And we didn't have anybody from this record company come into the studio while we were rehearsing. And then we played it back to everybody. From a record company point of view, it wasn't what they wanted. Because they wanted a sampler album, really. But we had two people there. A guy who was head of the classical department of Decca, called Hugh Mendel, understood entirely what we were trying to do. And there was a vice president of London Records out of New York there, and he knew it. He knew that it was the beginning of, can I say, progressive rock.
I came home from a gig one night, and I knew that the other guys were wanting a song from me that we could rehearse up the next day over in a rehearsal studio in Barnes in West London. And I came home, sat on the bed, I started the bed, and I just put the two verses of Nights in White Satin together, and it was a series of kind of random thoughts. Makes sense to me, John, but I'm not sure. I've spent most of my life trying to explain it, but it's about a lot of things. Yeah, I was at the end of one big love affair and the beginning of another. But I took these two verses into the rehearsal room the next day, and I played it to everybody, and they were like, yeah. And then Mike Pinder, who got an instrument called the mellotron, he said, "Play it again." So he'd only just got this mellotron. He moved on from his Vox Continental organ, and he said, "Play it again," and I played it again. Nice in White Satin, and he went, da 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 da. And then everybody else was like, "Oh, I'm interested, man," kind of thing. And that's how that's what I remember.
Did you know when you wrote it? I mean, some people, it goes as you can imagine. Some artists I talk to, they're all the classic rockers because that's my lane. Half of them say yes, I knew, and the other half say no. Well, what did you know about that song? Did you know you had something?
I didn't think anybody would ever hear it, but then that goes for our whole album, the Days of Future Past album. I assume that nobody else would ever hear it. Maybe a few nerds that were interested in stereo, because that was the purpose of it,
Yeah, yeah.
to be a stereo demonstration record. But it was the executive producer, Hugh Mendel, really, who worked at Decca, was one of the elderly gentlemen at Decca. They were pretty much all elderly gentlemen then. And he had a belief in it, and he really saw it through. And when it came out, it was a budget price album, so Nights was part of that. Though I don't think anybody expected much, but then people started to get interested in it, and thank goodness FM radio started, over in the old part of the world, and it sounded just right. It sounded beautiful on FM.
It was brilliant, I have to tell you, because before then, recording sessions were like 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, 2 to 5, and 6 till 10. That's all you could have. And when they approached us to make this album, Days of Future Past, we said, we'll do it, providing we can have total lockdown, 24 hours a day in the studio. And I don't think anyone had ever asked for that before. And they said yes. They said,
Where'd you get the guts to? Where'd you get, for you're a bunch of young guys, and I love that you did that. And I know the story. I just want you to say it, of course. But where did you get the kahunas to ask that as a young band?
Well, we just did. I don't know. We just did. That's what we wanted to do. I think, we've all been playing for 4 or 5 years before that, covering songs from America, all American songs, most of the blues, rock and roll. But it was all based from New Orleans and the Delta and Memphis and Elvis and Memphis. And we'd never been to America. So how could you sing really from the heart about these songs? And so we decided to write our own songs, and we said, well, if we're going to record them, we need this studio because we need to experiment and see how we're going. And if 3 o'clock in the morning we're still in the studio, we're still in the studio. And we asked, and we got it. And we asked all the while. And we had the head of Decca Records was a wonderful guy called Sir Edward Lewis. And he let us do what we wanted to do. We'd ring him up and said, headphones are the worst thing in the world. And he would say, well, what one do you need? And we'll tell him and do it, And lots of things used to go on like that. And we'd be in their studio at 4 o'clock in the morning. People
Did you know what you had? did you know what you had? Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm looking at this, and every time I listen to that album, I'm going, I'm just swept away after all these years, and I've heard it hundreds of times. I still get goosebumps from it. I still go that in the middle of it. Did you know you were creating greatness, or did you know it was different? At least you knew it was
we knew it was different, and the other thing is, I'm the bass player and the vocalist and the harmony. Graham's a drummer. Mike's the mellotron. Justin's acoustic and singer. Ray is singer, flute player. But we all knew our own parts. And until we went into the studio and heard what all those parts put together sounded like, we didn't hear that before. You can't hear that when you're rehearsing because you're concentrating on what you're doing. You don't hear the whole sound. And I remember on the playback, when we had the playback, we in the dark, we always put the lights down totally out. Big speakers on in the studio floor, and we invited girlfriends and friends and a couple of people, the record company. And when we played the song back first, if I remember right, nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was dead quiet. It's like, oh, what just happened? It was really, we played it again. Let's play it again. And we played again. And after the second time, it was like, I don't know what we've done, whether it's going to be successful or what, but we knew it was different. And we were, I think, proud. Yeah, we were proud of what we'd made. We were proud of this album. It didn't matter if it sold. It really didn't. It was not about that at all. It was something magic that we had created and no one else had.
So the quote for Tuesday Afternoon that I saw was guitar and joint in hand. Well, that's a when in Rome thing. When you're young, you just, and it was also, the times, of course. Tell me something about that song. One of my favorite songs of all time, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice. What did you say? Guitar? Well, never mind.
Guitar and joint in hand.
Yeah, there were slightly a few other things going on as well. But so it was really part of the Days of Future Past sessions when it'd been established that we would do this record along with Peter Knight and use a format of sort of day in the life of one person. I already had the night because I'd written nights some months before. Mike had already got Dawn, where Dawn is a feeling. And it was like, hey, I'm in for the afternoon. And then I went back to where I was brought up in Wiltshire, in the west of England, and sort of sat in a field and wrote, wrote the song that was Tuesday Afternoon. And then I never thought much about that, but it was released as a single in the US in place of Nights. They didn't release Nights, and we had quite a decent sort of hit with it. And I think that inspired or instigated the whole thing with our agent and Bill Graham bringing us over to the US in '68. It was. I wouldn't say it was particularly nights. It was probably Tuesday afternoon that people knew us for.
I had a roommate for a short time, lunch break, peak hour. He used to wake up to it. He had it on cassette, and he would the symphony. It's beginning. It's really nice, right? The second it picked up, he would get out of bed, and I remember I knew it. I already knew the song because I knew the album. But every single morning. Not that it drove us crazy because it was in his room and we could barely hear it, but he was blaring it. Just wanted to share that with you. There's a guy named Pete out there who woke up to it every morning.
Okay, Pete, I hope you're still waking up to it.
Tell me about that piece, by the way.
I rode there in the back of the van. We were going down a motorway, a freeway, and the tempo going over the concrete steps. And I thought, I wonder if you write a song in that tempo. And Graham was sitting in front of me in the group van. I said, Graham, how long can you keep this tempo up for? Do, 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 do. And I thought, I'm going to write a song in that tempo. And it was born about in that van, the tempo. But I really wanted to have a different type of rock and roll song. I wanted to be rock and roll and suddenly stop and get into this ethereal, like orchestral organ type part with harmonies, and to take people by surprise, and I think that's what Pico was about, really. You can be, and all the hustle and bustle there, but there has to be a time in that period when you're calm in your life.
Nights in White Satin. What was your first impression when Justin brought that song in? What was your impression?
Totally different to anything else, It was the minor chord at the beginning was perfect for the Moody Blues. And he played it to, we were all sharing different apartments. We were all living in the one block of flats. And I remember Justin played it to Ray, and Ray was fiddling on his flute. And I heard it then, and I thought it was great song.
I hope you enjoyed that. Remember, if you want to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do that. Also, remember, you can subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you on board. Like our videos, share them on social media, and comment on them as well. You can buy swag. We have lots of t-shirts and caps for your summer wear. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link. And if you want to join our Patreon, there's a link, and it's all in the description. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.